Hello everyone, Aiden here, and welcome to my preseason top 25 for the 2026-27 year of college football. This is something that I've worked on pretty much with my new chapter on this channel being more college sports focused, and this is one of the first few projects that I worked on. And I'm just really excited to share you my top 25 with the new college season coming up. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And before I get into this list, I want to let you know how I made this list. I pretty much made this list for a few factors. One of which were the key returners that are going to be on these teams, whether they could be going bowling, on the playoff bubble for the college football playoffs, or national title contenders. That's what I made this on. Another factor I did this was the transfers, what they brought in, what they did to sort of retool them for next season and all that stuff. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get started. So at number 25, I have the Virginia Tech Hokies. We're going to start off with a bit of a surprise one here. It is James Franklin's first year in Blacksburg, and he brought over a bunch of Penn State players like quarterback Ethan Grunkemeyer, tight end Luke Reynolds, defensive end Malachi Williams, and Keon Wiley, I think is how you say his name. And I think one of the best things that he did when he got there was that he retained the previous head coach Brent Pry as his defensive coordinator, which is in this day and age, it's unheard of for a previous coach to keep the previous one on their staff. I think it's one of the best factors I love about college football is that a head coach would bring back a key staff member or like a head coach to be like a coordinator, like this right here with Brent Pry. And I think another one is Texas with Will Muschamp, but we'll get to that later, way later. And it's great because I know that Brent Pry loves Virginia Tech so much. He wants to make this program the best it could be, and the fact that he gets to stay here with his old friend Franklin is awesome. And not only that, they have 14 returning starters, which is insane because it kind of just shows the culture that I guess that Pry built when he was there. Many players kind of loved what he was doing down there, but even though it didn't go out as if they thought it was, they still loved it there. Now that James Franklin is coming over, I think the relationship there has only gotten bigger. And I wrote down here that they have some key transfers here. I'll go ahead and read this right here. Keyshawn Brown from Duke, and also Marlon Jackson. I don't know where he's from. I forgot to put that in here. But I think for now, since it's Franklin's first year in Blacksburg, he's got to get the Hokies to bowling, at least. Or maybe at the very best, a contender for the ACC title. And I also wrote down here some of the biggest games that each of the teams are going to have to play. So some of the big games on here are at Miami, at SMU, Georgia Tech at home, and of course, the Commonwealth Cup against Virginia, which is a massive game because if you want to talk about like a house divided and bragging rights for the state of Virginia, you have to win this game after the Hoos had that awesome 11-win season. And I think it's going to be a good first year for Franklin and Blacksburg, and I am very, very excited to see what he does there. So keep an eye on the Hokies. At 24, I have Oklahoma State, which is Eric Morris's first year with the Cowboys. He comes over from North Texas, and he brought over a bunch of players of the Mean Green to join his staff down in Stillwater. Like, obviously, quarterback Drew Meston-Maker, one of the biggest stories, I think, of college football last year, who threw over 4,000 yards and 34 touchdowns. Running back Caleb Hawkins, 25 touchdowns, 1,400 yards. Wyatt Young, 1,200 yards, who pretty much helped the Mean Green to be a good contender in the American Conference. And he also brought in some All-American Conference players like Brandon Nelson and Johnny Dixon III. So I think this is going to be a sneakily good offense in the Big 12. So I think that the Cowboys are ready to play in their first year. And on the defensive side, there is, again, Mean Green all over. Kavian Hudson, tackle Sidney Clemens, linebacker Ethan Westlock, cornerback Colin Lewis, safety Evan Jackson, and nickel Quentin Hammond. They also brought in a couple transfers like Isaiah Chisholm from UCLA and Christian Bodner from Liberty, so that'll be a good add. Now, some of the biggest games on here: Oregon at home, Texas Tech at home, at Houston, at Arizona State, And I think that their biggest game is obviously Texas Tech. The Red Raiders obviously won the Big 12 last year, and they're pretty much, I think, still in the front runner-up to win the Big 12 and make the playoffs again. So beating the reigning Big 12 champs would be good for the people down in Stillwater. So bowl eligibility is there, but it would be huge, huge if Oklahoma State is in that Big 12 race. So keep an eye on them. 26, I have the Florida Gators. John Summerall's first year coming over from Tulane, obviously taking the green wave to win the American Conference and their first ever college football playoff experience. And they even brought back a lot of starters. Both wide receivers, Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown III, are back. Running back Jaden Baugh, who could be one of the best running backs in the SEC. And also tackle Caden Jones, I think, is on the defensive side. And that defense, speaking of which, is pretty much the same as last year. Miles Graham, Bryce Thornton, Jaden Woods, and Cameron James are coming back. And they brought in a lot of transfers with their new offensive coordinator, Buster Faulkner, who comes in from Georgia Tech. Obviously, Aaron Philo is pretty much going to be in that projected start to be a quarterback. And he also brought in Eric Singleton Jr., who was at Auburn for a year, to reunite with his old OC. They lost Caleb Banks and Jake Slaughter, their center, but they also brought in defensive coordinator Brad White, who has shown in some games when he was at Kentucky that he has a pretty good defense. Like a couple years ago, they almost beat Georgia. They destroyed Florida last year. So this might be one of the most underrated coordinator duos, maybe like in the entire country. And it could help maybe propel the Gators to win the SEC or be like in that dark horse contender. Some of the biggest games, obviously, they're facing Georgia and Atlanta for the yearly rivalry game. They go to Auburn, Missouri, and they face Oklahoma at home. And I think if you want to make a statement in the SEC, you might need to beat Auburn on the road. That's their very first SEC game at Jordan-Hare, one of the hardest places to play in the country. So getting a win there would be a rocket start for the people in Gainesville. At 22, I have Missouri. The Missouri Tigers, obviously with Eli Drinkwitz's 7th year in Columbia. This is a team that I think like people don't really give enough credit because it's like, oh, they rank Mizzou every year because they don't get that big win, yada, yada, yada. But I think what they have this year is honestly very interesting that I think it maybe deserves this spot right here. I gotta fix my camera. Sorry, I had to fix my camera right there. But anyways, they return some offense. Obviously, both running backs, Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts, are back. And also Donovan Olubade, their star receiver, their sophomore. Linebacker Caden Gree is like an All-American SEC player. Brett Norfleet, their senior tight end. And offensive line people Dominique Judice, Curtis Piekler, and Logan Reichert are coming back. And they also brought in a lot of transfers. Austin Simmons comes in from Ole Miss as a immediate starter, so I cannot wait to see what he does. And he also brought in some of his guys from Oxford as well, like Caden Lee, their receiver, and also Chris Graves Jr., their cornerback. But they also brought in some other good transfers. Caleb Goody from Cincinnati, Zach Owens from Mississippi State, Robert Woodard Jr. from Auburn, Jaleel Florence from Oregon. That's pretty good as well. They have a new offensive coordinator in Chip Lindsey, who comes over from Michigan. So interesting to see what his like scheme of offense does with Simmons at quarterback. On the defense, it looks a bit different, but they have some familiar faces and returning seniors like Darius Smith, Santana Banner, and Nick Rodriguez. Their schedule, I think, is pretty tough, but they have some winnable games. They obviously have to go to their border war game against Kansas. They got games like Florida, Texas, and Oklahoma at home. But I think their biggest game is surprisingly not Kansas. It is not Kansas. I think it's Florida at home, which I found out is Mizzou's homecoming game, which, yeah, you can see, I know because I'll be there, the band, all that stuff. But I think that these two teams have some good matchups over the years. Obviously, the 4th and 17 game in 2023, the overtime win in 2021, if you all remember that game. But yeah, I pretty much just put Florida and Mizzou next to each other because I feel like these two are pretty much like equals. Like, one's got a new coach and some good players, while the other one has an experienced head coach in a culture that he's familiar with, but has some players that are returning that come along with him. So I think Mizzou and Florida are interchangeable, but like you could just take it the other way. 27, I have Houston, the Houston Cougars. This is Willie Fritz's third year. He won 10 games with the Cougars. And I think Willie Fritz is a very good coach. He's very underrated. Obviously, he had that great season with Tulane back in 2022. They won the American, I think, and they beat USC in the Cotton Bowl and the Union Six Bowl game. And the returning starters, obviously, Connor Wigman is back at quarterback. Amari Thomas, Kobe Young, Khalil Laufau, I think is how you say his name. Brandon Mack II, Kentrell Webb. And the transfers, I think, are pretty good as well. They brought in Micah Hughes from Oregon, tight end Patrick Overmeyer from UTSA, and Trent Walker from Oregon State. And they are obviously in the Big 12 hunt. They are looking to get to Arlington, win the conference, and make their first college football playoff appearance. They are a immediate contender, in my opinion, with Texas Tech and BYU. So I think this is going to be a sneaky team. This will be fun to watch. I might check out this team. Their biggest games are obviously at Texas Tech, and they go to Utah, and they host Oklahoma State at home. But the game at Texas Tech in Lubbock is a big one. It's week 3, I think it is. It might be week 3. I'll check that later. But still, going on the road, I think it's going to be like a new rivalry against the Red Raiders. So watch out for the Cougars. At 22, I have the Penn State Nittany Lions. This is Matt Campbell's first year coming over from Iowa State. He brings over a massive program set after James Franklin was obviously fired midseason, which led him to go to Virginia Tech. He brings almost all of his starting players from Iowa State, like Rocco Beck, their quarterback, Carson Hansen, the running back, Armstrong Nodem, I think it was, Caleb Bacon, Darius Dixon, Chase Sowell, all of those guys are coming back. So I wrote here that Matt Campbell didn't really get the respect he did at Iowa State because the Cyclones weren't really historically good at football, but he was still a good coach in what he did in Ames. I think it was like a couple years ago where he took it to the Big 12 championship, had a double-digit winning season, and he's starting new in a program which is expected to be a blue blood. And this is a head coach who's turned down a bunch of NFL opportunities and just to stay in the college game, because I know that he absolutely loves doing what he does at this level. Penn State has a very easy schedule. They play USC at home, and I think that game against USC is going to be a big one. They've obviously have played some great games in the Rose Bowl, like the 2016 one. That was a great game. They go to Michigan and Washington, but I think that game against the Trojans at home is going to be their biggest game. So Penn State, sneaky Big Ten contender, but maybe not this year, but we'll see. At 19, I have the SMU Mustang. Rhett Lashley has been killing it down in Dallas, I think is where it is. And they're back in the ACC race, just coming short of it last year. I think they lost to Cal like on the last play. I think they like screwed up or something, I don't remember. And he's got all the resources needed to get back into the CFP. Like they brought back Kevin Jennings, who could be one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC and in the entire country. They have a lot of starters coming back who are preseason all ACC players like PJ Williams, Joshua Bates, Morgan Tribbett, Ymir Knight, all those guys. And they have some solid transfers. Kendrick Raphael comes over from Cal, who ran over 900 yards and 13 touchdowns, and also defensive end Ira Singleton from South Florida. They also revamped their secondary, which was one of the biggest factors on this team to win, and I think is what made them lose a few games. Their biggest games are obviously they go to Notre Dame in South Bend. They go to Florida State, I think, in week 1, so that's going to be a big game in the ACC. They play Cal at home, and they go to Louisville, and I think that game against the Cardinals at Louisville is a big one. Obviously, Jeff Brom's been killing it down there at his alma mater. So I think both SMU and Louisville are going to be like kind of neck and neck in the ACC race, but that's going to be, I think, SMU's biggest challenge. Maybe not Notre Dame because obviously it's not an in-conference game, but Louisville, I think, is the biggest one. 18, I have Utah. This is Morgan Scalley's first year for being a longtime defensive coordinator for Kyle Whittingham before he left to Michigan. And he's taken reins over the Utes. They brought back quarterback Devin Dampier, who returns to ignite that offense to get back in the Big 12 title, who was a very, very good quarterback last year. And they also returned a lot of players like Wayshawn Parker, the running back who ran over 900 yards, linebacker Elijah Davis, Larry Simmons, the wide receiver, and also tight end Andrews Hunter is back too. They really play their A game at home against the best teams because Rice Eccles, I think, is one of the best environments in college football, especially when they face stronger teams. They play, obviously, their rivals BYU soon, so that environment's going to be insane. And speaking of BYU, that is their biggest game. Obviously, the Holy War, one of the best rivalries in college football, is so good. They also go to TCU and Arizona. Both of those tough road games could be trap games, but the BYU game, I think, is going to be the biggest game. So most of that defense returns with all that incredible depth. So I think that Utah might take a step back from the Big 12 race, but I still think they're very good because Morgan Scalley carries that culture. They have obviously great history of competing for Pac-12 titles when they were used to be that. So yeah, I think the Utes will be good. 17, I have the Washington Huskies. This is Jed Fish's third year in Seattle, and the Huskies, I think, are looking to play spoiler in the Big Ten. Dual threat quarterback Damon Williams comes back after that weird transfer portal plot line. I think he was going to go to LSU. I don't remember that. But that tight relationship he has with his head coach is awesome because I think Jed Fish is the play caller, like on offense. I'm not sure if that's true. Someone could like fact check me on that. So the key players I think that Washington also has, along with quarterback Williams, is wide receiver Desmond Roebuck. Darian Conley comes over from Ball State. Rashawn Clark and John Mills, the guard, are awesome. So I think UW's defense is going to be great. Speaking of defense, their defensive coordinator, Ryan Walters, is a very good defensive coordinator. Obviously, he was the former head coach at Purdue, so he's done some good work with the Huskies. This is easily a top 25 caliber team, and I think they're probably going to win like maybe 8 to 10 games and be on that playoff bubble. The biggest games on here is at Nebraska, at Oregon versus Iowa, and I think the biggest game is obviously against Indiana, the reigning national champions, trying to get that big win after they almost beat Ohio State and Oregon last year. So I think that game with Indiana going to Seattle in Husky Stadium is going to be one of the best games in the Big Ten. Sorry about that. I had to turn on my fan because it was getting pretty hot in here. But yes, Washington at 17. 16, I have Alabama, the Alabama Crimson Tide. This is Kalen DeBoer's third year in Tuscaloosa. Right now, there is a huge quarterback battle between Keelan Russell and Austin Mack, and I think that Russell might get the start. And word on the street is saying that I think Keelan Russell might be the actual big deal. Like, well, he hasn't really got any starts at all. I think when Ty Simpson was the quarterback last year, but I think it's pretty much going to be like a rebuild year after Kalen DeBoer got that extension. So maybe not like a playoff, maybe a playoff. I don't know. I think Alabama might be one of those biggest question marks for the SEC. They could be good, maybe not, but we'll see. They have a lot of games on the schedule that could be like massive trap games. Like they host Auburn at home, Texas A&M, Georgia, South Carolina, and they go to LSU, Tennessee, Mississippi State. But that Georgia game, obviously Alabama and Georgia games always deliver such classics, and obviously the game in Tuscaloosa in 2024 was incredible, and the Dogs are coming back this year, so Bama has to beat Georgia again if they want to get back in that playoff talk. They have a lot of players coming back, like Xavier Brown, Bray Hubbard, Keon Sabb, Ryan Coleman-Williams, obviously their star receiver, Daniel Hill, Yanze Pierre, and nickel London Simmons as well. But I think one of the reasons why I said this could be a rebuild was that they lost 10 players in the NFL draft. Like, obviously, Ty Simpson left. Also, Jan Miller, Caden Proctor, Jeremy Bernard, and LT Overton. I don't really know what the running game is going to be like since that wasn't Bama's biggest strengths back then. But I would say if Russell turns out to be who he is and the running game finds its groove, I think the Crimson Tide will be back in that playoff race. At 15, I have the Michigan Wolverines. This is Kyle Whittingham's first year in Ann Arbor. The Wolverines are obviously 3 years away from their national title and are still keeping that championship level staff, which is awesome. Obviously, the legacy that Jim Harbaugh had for being all those years there is what helped kept Michigan to be in that championship mentality. And Kyle Whittingham is obviously one of the best coaches in college football, in my opinion, with his legacy he had at Utah, and now carrying that over in Ann Arbor will be pretty cool to see. They retained Bryce Underwood and also some great starters like Jair Hill, Zeke Berry, Troy Bowles, I think is how you say it, and running back Marshall Johnson. They also brought in Zach Marshall and Andrew Marsh, especially on the offense. And I think with Jason Eck following Whittingham from Utah to Michigan, I think that this offense could find its groove with Jason Eck there. They lost a lot of starters like Rod Moore, Mason Curtis, but they had some good guys like John Henry Daly, who came with Whittingham from Utah. That'll be good. And they have some pretty good games this year. Well, not necessarily like good, but like big games. Like they have Oklahoma, Indiana, and Iowa at home. But they also go to Oregon and Ohio State for obviously the rivalry game. And you know that Ohio State game is the game that Michigan has to win to beat their arch rivals after losing to them in Ann Arbor last year, breaking the streak, what the Buckeyes did. So I think that Michigan needs to play their absolute best, especially in November when they go to Oregon and Ohio State, if they want to be in that Big Ten race. Speaking of title races and stuff, I have Texas Tech, the Red Raiders. This is Joey McGuire's 5th year down in Lubbock. And I think that after the Brendan Sorsby situation with him not returning to Lubbock, not being with the team, they need to recover in some ways from the past few weeks. So here comes Will Hammond, who returns from quarterback after tearing his ACL back in October when Brendan Morton took over. So we'll see how that goes. Some returners they brought back are running back Cameron Dickey, tight end Terrence Carter Jr., and Micah Hudson. And for the transfers, they still are doing insanely well in the portal. Malcolm Simmons from Auburn, Kenny Johnson from Pitt, Dante Lee Jr., Adam Trick, tackles Mateen Obirogba, I think is how you say his name, and also Bryce Butler from Washington. So, hands down, I think this is the best secondary in the Big 12, and I think that secondary is going to be dangerous, absolutely dangerous, with quarterbacks Bryce Pollock and Amir Boyd, with safety Brendan Jordan and nickel John Curry returning. And some of the big games that Houston has, obviously, is that they have Houston at home, which I think is going to be the biggest game. We talked about that previously with Houston. You can go replay that part. They also play TCU at home, which I think is going to be a sneaky one because Horned Frogs, I think, are going to be a bit competitive in the Big 12. And they go to Oklahoma State with Eric Morris's new year in Stillwater. So we'll see how the Red Raiders do this year, but I think they're going to be neck and neck in the Big 12. With my next team on my list is at 13, BYU under Kalani Sitake's 11th year. And the Cougars somehow kept Kalani Sitake, which I think is the best LDS coach ever, thanks to a certain incident with a cookie brand. But I think they are my pick to win the Big 12. But I think this is going to be a fun team to watch. They brought so many people back, like obviously the quarterback Bear Bachmeier, and obviously LJ Martin, their running back as well. And on the defensive side, they have Isaiah Glasker and Evan Johnson as well. This could probably be the most complete team in the Big 12, and I think this is finally the year that BYU breaks down the door and finally gets into playoffs. Their biggest games, I think, are at... Some of the biggest games, obviously, they go to Utah for the Holy War, but they also play Arizona home as well. But the biggest game, I think, is... Obviously, they play Notre Dame, the Fighting Irish, at home, which is sort of like a replacement game after losing USC. But I still think beating the Irish will do wonders for their playoff resume. At 12, I have LSU, the Tigers. This is Lane Kiffin's first year, obviously, after the crazy drama that happened with him leaving Oxford and all that stuff. But I still think the excitement around him in Baton Rouge is exceedingly high, and the season should be an exciting one if you're an LSU fan. They have a lot of transfers. Obviously, quarterback Sam Levitt comes in. Their tackle Jordan Seaton from Colorado, Jace Brown from K-State, Trey Wilson III from Florida, Ty Benefield from Boise State, and Princewell Umamielen from Ole Miss. So LSU, obviously, in the long term, has expectations for being like a tried and true dynasty. And Lane Kiffin really has never been at that high upper level of being like an elite head coach. He has done it maybe at Ole Miss, but he didn't really, as a coach, coached him in the playoffs. So again, the excitement around Baton Rouge is great. So I'd say maybe give it a few years under Kiffin, and maybe we can see LSU back in that playoff race again. And their biggest game is, you know what it is. It's the game going to Oxford, week 3, might be the game of the year. That environment is going to be unreal. Going to be toxic, going to be intense, just everything you want to see out of a college football game. They also have Texas and Alabama at home, but that Ole Miss game is the game of the year. Watch out for LSU. At 11, I have Oklahoma. This is Brent Venables' 5th year. He brought the Sooners back into the playoffs since 2019, but obviously they lost to Alabama on their first game, which sucks so much. But they're an underrated team in the SEC with a top 20 defense, obviously, with Brent Venables. Obviously, I think one of the best defensive-minded coaches maybe ever in college football. But I think the offense kind of struggled a tiny bit last year, maybe because John Mateer, their quarterback, who is, by the way, coming back, which is great. Mateer was mainly just like running the ball and throwing it to Isaiah Satania. But I trust offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle to bring the Sooners back into that elite offense, obviously with his relationship with Mateer from Washington State. So that'll carry over on all of the defense, which will be great. And they brought back a lot of starters. Isaiah Zatania, like I said, is back too. Xavier Robinson, Kip Lewis, Peyton Bowen, Eli Bowen as well. And their kicker, Tate Sandell, is a good kicker. He'll be back as well. Also with defensive tackle David Stone. A couple of wide receiver transfers like Parker Livingston from Texas and Trell Harris from Virginia. The biggest game, obviously, for the Sooners is against Texas in Dallas, Red River rivalry, one of the best environments, or I guess experiences ever in sports in the entire world. They also go to Michigan and Georgia, and they host Texas A&M at home. But obviously, that Texas game is the biggest one every year. So now we're getting into the top 10. These are the teams that I think will 100% make the playoffs, whether you like it or not. So be warned, I might get a bit spicy here, but let's see what happens. At number 10, I have USC. Yes, the USC Trojans. Lincoln Riley is in his 5th year. And I think, I gotta fix my chair for a second. Now, here's the spiciness right here. There is no other coach in the country under more pressure than Lincoln Riley. Ever. What he brought back is crazy. Obviously, he brought back Jaden Mayaver, his quarterback, King Miller, and Jordan Wayman at running back, Tobias Raymond's at tackle, Kalen Miller at guard, and also Noah Alani. This has to be the year Lincoln Riley has to take USC to the playoffs for the first time. They have been knocking on the door for years. He has to win this or things are going to look bad. So this is a playoff or bust team like right here for USC. The Trojans have to make it this year. It's now or never for them. And former Northwestern head coach Gary Patterson is their new defensive coordinator. So I think that is a very interesting hire. I don't really know how that will turn out, but we'll see. The biggest games, obviously, they play Oregon at home, which I think is obviously the biggest game for them. Obviously, old Pac-12 rivals, so that'll be fun. They also play Ohio State at home. That'll be a crazy game. And they go to Penn State, like I said before. But still, that Oregon game at home is a perfect example of a game that USC needs to win if they really want to make it to the playoffs. We'll see what happens. At number 9, I have Texas A&M, Mike Elko's 3rd year in College Station, who has already staked his claim in making the Aggies a contender for an SEC championship to get them back into the playoffs. And the defense has shown some greatness under Elko, and that offense kind of needs to find its identity after those 2 losses at the end of the season, obviously losing to Texas and Miami in the playoffs. They lost their offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, and they have some new coordinators taking the reins. But I think the ranking that I put them at 9, this spot at number 9, is their ceiling. I'm not entirely sure. They could probably go higher. You could probably make a case. Maybe they could be like, I don't know, top 6 or 5. But for now, I'll just put them at number 9. The returners obviously are great. Marcel Reed, Mario Craver, and Ruben Owens III. And the transfers are pretty good as well. Anto Saka from Northwestern, their defensive tackle, and Isaiah Horton comes in from Alabama. They have tricky games on their schedule. They go to Alabama, they host Arizona State, they go to Oklahoma. But the big game for the Aggies is obviously against Texas. They gotta beat TU. They're Lone Star Showdown rivals. You have to beat Texas. You have to. You've been so close these past couple of years. This is the year you have to do it. So the Aggies have to get that big win. At number 8, I have Ole Miss. This is Pete Golding's first fully fledged year as a head coach after leading the Rebels to that awesome playoff run. That was so incredible to see. And he's already gained some love from the wins he had, beating Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, obviously what I think was the best game of the college football season last year. You also bring back QB1, Trinidad Chambliss, and running back 1 in Keywan Lacey. That immediately is huge. That's huge for them. And they also brought back wide receiver Deuce Alexander, defensive tackle Will Eccles, and son Terry and Perkins are back as well. For the transfers, they brought in Jonte Cook II from Syracuse and Micah Boyriu from Florida. I think it's how you say his name, but I don't know. So for Ole Miss, I think there's going to be some regression, but the Rebels are obviously looking to get back into the playoffs because that offense is going to be insanely elite to watch. For the biggest games, they go to Texas and they host Georgia at home, but LSU, we said it before, potential game of the year, Lane Kiffin coming back, all that stuff. So yeah, LSU is the game for Ole Miss to win. At 7, I have the Miami Hurricanes. Mario Cristobal is in his 5th year, who has already built the best team in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Mario Cristobal is, we know, an exceptional program builder from his stuff at Oregon. And the best thing about Cristobal and his track record of building teams is something that Desmond Howard said in College Game Day. That Miami team from last year was like an Alabama team because they're built strong up front from the inside out with the offensive lines. That is what his secret recipe is. And they were big difference makers beating Ohio State and Ole Miss. So yeah, I think that defense is again going to be scary with the Canes. They brought in Darian Mensah at quarterback from Duke, and it's going to be pretty cool to see him with offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson's offense that loves to strike back when it looks like they're down. And they're dangerous with the rest of the offense they have. They brought in some transfers like Vendrevius Jacobs, the wide receiver from South Carolina, and Damon Wilson II from Missouri on the edge. Their key returners are great as well. Malachi Toney, Mark Fletcher, Mohamed Toure, and Xavier Lucas are obviously coming back. The biggest game for them is obviously they go to South Bend and play Notre Dame, which was the game that pretty much decided the playoff race and was arguably the game of the year. They also go to Clemson, obviously ACC rival, and they host Virginia Tech at home, which we know what happened the last time the Hokies came to Hard Rock Stadium, which was so close, so we'll see if that game turns out fine. At number 6, I have the Indiana Hoosiers, the reigning national champions. Kurt Cignetti's obviously turned that program upside down, and they are certainly not going away after shocking the world, winning that national title. And they have maybe the best coordinator duo with offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan and defensive coordinator Brian Hayes. They reloaded greatly in the portal, bringing over Josh Hoover from TCU, Tuber Richard from Boston College, Nick Marsh from Michigan State, AJ Harris from Penn State, and Toby Asunsanmi from K-State, which is great. And some good players are coming back too, like Charlie Becker, Mario Landino, and Elijah Hardy as well. So the Hoosiers are once again going to be in that Big Ten title race, so watch out for them. Biggest game, I think, for them is playing Ohio State at home in October, so that'll be a fun game to watch. And they also go to Michigan and Washington, but the Ohio State game is the biggest game for the Hoosiers. So now we're going to come into the top 5. These are the teams that I think that are going to be tried and true national title contenders. And starting at number 5, I have Ohio State. This is Ryan Day's 8th year with the Buckeyes, and they are certainly a certified blue blood at this point, winning the national title with that awesome run they had from the first round to all the way beating Notre Dame in the national title. And they are certainly still killing it with the star talent they have in the elite recruiting. They have a new offensive coordinator in Arthur Smith after Brian Hartline left to be the head coach at South Florida. And they've returned a lot of players. Julian Sain is coming back, Jeremiah Smith, Brandon Innes, Bo Jackson, and Bo Atkinson as well. Some of the transfers they brought over were interesting, like Qua Rusaw from Alabama and Earl Little Jr. from Florida State. So a couple of tweaks they made on the defense. And their biggest game is undoubtedly against Michigan. Beating the team up north is huge for Ohio State, and that's a team that they finally have to beat at home since 2018. It's been that long, 8 years. They have to win it. They also go to Texas and Indiana, and they also host Oregon at home, but the Michigan game is a game that Ohio State needs to win. At number 4, we have the Georgia Bulldogs. This is Kirby Smart's 11th year with the Dogs, and they brought back a lot of key players especially on offense, like Gunnar Stockton, Nate Frazier, Chauncey Bowens, London Humphrey, and the defense is good as well, like DeMello Jones and Ellis Robinson the fourth and Jordan Hall. So this team, undoubtedly, Kirby Smart, one of the best head coaches in the country, is going to look back and finally get back into that national title race, especially after losing the Sugar Bowl twice in the past couple of years. So Georgia has to finally make that run that they've been looking for, because the consistency they've had in the preseason is unreal to see. Some of the biggest games are pretty much just road games. They go to Alabama and Ole Miss, but they play Oklahoma in week 3, and that, or I think it's in week 4, I don't know. But still, they play Oklahoma early in the season, and that game is going to be insane to watch. A rematch of the 2018 Rose Bowl, that unbelievable game that Georgia won in double overtime, so watch out for the Dogs. At number 3, we have the Oregon Ducks. This is Dan Lanning's 5th year in Eugene. He has pretty much all the returning tools needed to reach the national title game since 2015, and they are one of the main contenders in the Big Ten and in the entire country. But they did obviously lose both of their coordinators to head coaching jobs. Toss Napoli and Will Stein are both going to Cal and Kentucky. But that culture of winning is still strong in Eugene. Obviously, I think is what the mentality that they have there is like, I think according to them, it's like connection, toughness, growth, sacrifice. That's obviously one of the best things I've seen out of a college football program, and they are killing it with that. I love it. Some of the returners obviously are a lot. You do not know what they brought back. Dante Moore, Decory Moore, Jeremiah McClellan, Evan Stewart, Jordan Davidson, Dyer Hill, Jamari Johnson, Brandon Finney Jr., Tatum Tuioti, Mateo Uyangale, Amari Washington, and Bear Alexander. All of those guys are staying with the Ducks. They are not going anywhere. And they also brought in Coy Parrish from Minnesota, who could be a game changer, who I think could be like the next Caleb Downs, like maybe like the best safety in the entire country, maybe the best defender. And some of the biggest games for Oregon, they go to USC, they host Michigan at home, but the big game I think is on the road at Ohio State. Obviously, one of the contenders in the Big Ten. You got to make a statement in the Big Ten and tell the entire country that no, we are not going anywhere. You got to beat a program like Ohio State to tell that, yes, we are in that national title race. At number 2, I have the Texas Longhorns. This is Steve Sarkisian's 6th year in Austin. And this is the best roster, I think, in the SEC. Arch Manning is coming back. Ryan Wingo and Emmett Mosley were returning. Trevor Gooseby at tackle is back. Connor Robertson at center. Colin Simmons, one of the best defenders in the country as well. And the transfers they brought in were great, like Hollywood Smothers from NC State and Cam Coleman from Auburn, that incredible receiver. That connection between Arch Manning and Cam Coleman is going to be awesome to see. Will Muschamp is back as defensive coordinator at Texas. Obviously, he was there under Mac Brown. So that's another example of like a coordinator coming back with another coach, all that stuff. And they have maybe the toughest schedule they have this year. They have Ohio State at home, Ole Miss at home. They go to Texas A&M. They go to Dallas to face Oklahoma. Obviously, a bunch of other games on the schedule. I don't really know what else is on there, but still. The biggest game is obviously at Texas A&M. Going to Kyle Field, beating the Aggies is one of the number one priorities that Texas needs to do. You got to win these games, and winning is hard, especially in the conference of the SEC. I think Texas knows this, and they're going to show everyone that they matter a lot. And finally, for my number one pick, it's shocking. If you've been playing like a bit of a process of elimination, you might know who it is. It's Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman is in his 5th year. He has heard all of the noise about what has been said about Notre Dame and how they were snubbed from the playoffs, opted out of their bowl game. I think he is going to probably silence everybody. He is an unbelievable coach, built a insane culture in South Bend. He's one of my favorite head coaches. So this guy, I think, sort of just gets Notre Dame. He may be like, he is Notre Dame as a whole. And the people that he brought back are great. CJ Carr, Jordan Faison, and Jaden Greathouse. Both of those receivers are back. Leonard Moore and nickel Christian Gray are back as well. And some of the transfers they brought back were great as well. DJ McKinney from Colorado and 2 Ohio State receivers in Quincy Porter and Miles Graham. Their schedule is probably easy, but kind of hard at the same time. They go to BYU, of course we said that. They host Miami, and then they play Wisconsin in Green Bay and Lambeau Field. I think that could be like a tricky game for Notre Dame, but we'll see. But obviously the Miami game at home is the biggest game for the Irish. They are looking to get revenge on the team that pretty much got them out of the playoffs from losing to them on the road. Finally getting the Canes in South Bend at Notre Dame Stadium is a huge boon for the Irish that they need to win this game. And finally win a national title since, I think the 80s was? I don't really know, but we'll see. So with that is my top 25. I could probably put this list down in the comments for anybody who wants to see what it is, but just know that, again, this list was all my opinions. They were all my opinions, nobody else's. This is what I think is probably going to be like the preseason top 25. And I think at the end of the day, all of this sparks so much discussion because I'm looking through this list again. Almost every single team has a story to be followed, whether it's Notre Dame's bounce back after missing the playoffs, Indiana going back to back, Ole Miss with their new era and Pete Golding. Like, it just goes on and on. It never stops. That is what I love about college football. All the plot lines and how they would all soon just come together in December and January. Once that bracket is revealed, it's just so good. But this is obviously not a playoff projection. It's a top 25. So it's really just a way to showcase all of the teams to be excited for this upcoming college football season. And I hope you are excited as well as I am too. And speaking of this list, I'll also put down some honorable mentions. So with that, I hope you all enjoyed this video. Leave a like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell if you want to see more of this stuff in the future. And yeah, thank you for watching. Bye.